I had this belief that success would be defined by my job title. Be a banker, be a lawyer, be a doctor, be an accountant. And I looked at people ahead of me in the industry. I looked at how unhappy they were, persuaded me that it wasn't what I wanted to do long term.
I knew it. Like Simon has these moments where you feel like, now it makes sense.
So when you are growing your business, you want to focus on being a person of value. The more value that you bring to the marketplace, the more people want to pay you for that value.
Like, how do you know, like, this is my intuitive feeling and I need to act on it?
It's typically defined by your inner voice. When you feel particularly drawn to something, or if you make a choice, and then every day you wake up, there's a bit of tension inside of you, and you don't feel good about going to work, that is your intuition telling you maybe you're not meant to do that job.
Before I begin this podcast, I have a small request. If you've ever found value through this podcast or the other videos that I've been sharing on this channel, please do me a small favor. Please hit that subscribe button, like the videos, leave a comment, hit the bell icon. If you have any questions that you'd like me to ask to the next guest, please let me know in the comments as well. I would be happy to help you. It would mean the world to me if you help me grow this podcast, and I promise to bring on more guests to bring you more value. Now, back to the podcast.
Today, we're joined by a guy who is multidimensional. He's an entrepreneur, a public speaker, a coach, and the author of Energize, Make the Most of Every Moment. Simon Alexander Ong, thank you for coming onto the podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, and thank you so much for inviting me onto your show.
So, Simon, can you tell us like your background? Like, what's your story? How did you become a coach?
Sure. So I was born in the UK to two Malaysian Chinese parents. I went through the British school system, and I had this belief, this mistaken belief, that success would be defined by my job title. Be a banker, be a lawyer, be a doctor, be an accountant. So when I finished college, I went to university to study economics, and I started in the financial services industry at what was probably the worst possible time. It was the middle of 2007, which was a year before the global financial crisis swept across the planet. And the company that I started my career with was Lehman Brothers, which collapsed into administration just shy of 14 months after I joined. So even though it was a challenging moment in my career, especially with all those hopes and dreams that are swept away from under your feet, in hindsight, it was a beautiful blessing in disguise because it kickstarted the journey to where I am today. I started to ask myself questions such as, what did success mean to me? What sort of impact did I want to have in the world? And what did fulfillment look like? And so even though I was in and out of work within the financial services industry for nearly 10 years, that experience kickstarted the mental process to where I am today. And so on the side of my full-time job, I explored my curiosities. I tried things, I tried different business ideas, and then I landed on this idea of coaching. So when I quit my corporate career at the end of 2016, I started to coach individuals, which were primarily executives and entrepreneurs. And very quickly, that evolved into also speaking. So I've since spoken at some of the planet's most successful organizations and conferences. And then since then, I got invitations to be interviewed on platforms like the BBC and Sky News. And more recently, I had the opportunity to work with Penguin, the world's largest publishing house, to write my first book, Energize.
Right. Sounds awesome. Like so many takes on that. You said you like after you got into the financial services industry, you started exploring things. Like you started asking questions. In a sense, like I'm sure a lot of viewers would have the same questions. Like what were those questions like? And what were the answers that you thought of could help you reach to some sort of destination, like that helped you to get into some sort of coaching activities? You said you helped a lot of students who were trying to get into the college. So what was that thought process like?
I think when the financial crisis happened, one of the first questions I asked myself was, is this something I want to do for the rest of my life? And I looked at people ahead of me in the industry. I looked at how unhappy they were, I looked at how tied to their jobs they were. And the lack of freedom persuaded me that it wasn't what I wanted to do long term. But of course, at the time, I didn't know what else there was because I spent most of my day working in finance. I spent my evenings drinking with people in finance, and I spent my weekends socializing with people in finance. And so I was in this bubble or this echo chamber of just being in the financial services industry. And so when I started to ask myself questions such as what else is there outside of finance, I began to explore new worlds by going to events, seminars, workshops, talks, changing the books I read, changing what I watch, what I listen to, the podcasts, the audiobooks, even the people I spend time with. And because I diversified the input into my mind and environment, what happened is suddenly I had new perspective. I realized that there was so much out there that I could explore.
Right.
And that's when I got out there and just started experimenting, trying things, learning from others, and seeing where it could lead.
Right. That sounds interesting. Your first coaching gig, like, how was it like? Like, how did you get it?
My first couple of coaching clients were through my network. So I remember when I qualified as a coach, I just started telling people, I'm now working with individuals to help coach them to success. And if you are interested, let me know, because I'm looking for some people to practice with. And as you can imagine, because I was early and this was new, and a lot of my friends knew that I was the person people would come to when they had a challenge, I just started coaching people within my own network and their networks. And I wasn't charging a lot at the beginning because I knew that I had to build the experience and I had to understand how to become a good coach. And the best way to learn is to do. And so I just decided to get out and have as many conversations as I could in order to build my coaching practice. And as a result, build my experience. So eventually I could charge more and work with more inspiring clients.
Sounds awesome. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions about digging into your mind because I feel like I have a lot to learn from you. But before I do that, I have a question. Like, out of all the things, like, you have a lot of experience, even like you came into the financial services industry, and then you like you explored a lot of things and you got into the coaching business and you wrote a book. But like, why did you write about energy? Like, out of all the things that you were exploring, why did you write about energy?
I wrote about energy because if I look back at my journey, I think having the energy to get things done and the energy to show up in the world has been one of the most important areas in my life that I've worked on. You know, when you think about productivity, a lot of us immediately think time management. I've got to manage my time better if I want to be more productive. But actually, the key to productivity is not time management, it is energy management. Because to give you an example, you can be time rich, but if you are energy poor, you are going to waste that time that you have. But if you are energy rich, even if you're time poor, you'll get a lot more done than most people would. And so I really wanted to explore the impact of energy. So it's something I've observed that we all know and have had exposure to, but we don't really address in our everyday lives. So if you practice yoga, you might call this prana. If you are from the Maori culture, you might call this mana. If you are from my Chinese culture, you might call it qi. And if you are a fan of the Star Wars film franchise, you will call it the Force. Now, whatever term you use to describe it, we're all talking about the same thing, which is energy as a life force. And so for me, I see energy in 4 dimensions. It's your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual. And when you address those 4 areas, you show up in the world with a very different type of energy. An energy that draws people and opportunities into your world. And everyone begins to notice. They notice that you're something different. You show up differently. You come across differently. You feel like you are going places. Now they can't describe why, but they just feel it. And that's a result of your energy. You've changed your energy, and as a result, you transform your life and career.
Okay, so you say that you have like once you reach, you come off as in a way that people are drawn to you. Is there a spectrum that you can look at and you figure out, okay, I am over here and then I need to reach over there? How do I do that? Like, what's the bridge like?
First of all, one thing to understand is that there is no there, whatever
Okay.
there means. Because if you believe that there is a there to get to, so I'm here, I want to get there. A question to reflect on is what happens after you have got there? So it could be, for me, getting there is to make $1 million. For me, getting there is to own a house and have a great family. For me, getting there is getting that promotion next year at my company. Now, once you've got there, what happens next? If you see your destination as somewhere to get to, then what happens is that once you arrive, you can easily get complacent. You can easily take your foot off the pedal. So for me, it's less about getting somewhere and more about being someone. Because when you show up as somebody that possesses the characteristics and the traits that you desire, and all that you are focused on is being better than who you were yesterday, what happens is you set yourself up to win again and again and again. In fact, once you start on that journey, you realize there is no destination, because the ultimate goal in order to experience the greatest success in any area of your life is to remain an eternal student, to constantly learn, to constantly adapt, because the world is in change economically, politically, environmentally. But if you are always learning, if you are open to perspective, and you are not tied to a there, then what happens is that you are able to adapt regardless to the challenges that the world will throw your way.
Right. And so much of it is like being in the moment. You need to look at like micro wins and micro losses, not the macro game. You need to have a direction and then look at micro steps. So
Indeed,
how do you?
There's a relationship between the two. So it's a bit of a paradox, Aakash, actually, because the way to stack the odds in your favor is to think in decades, plan in months, and execute daily. Now, you have to have a vision of what you're working towards that gives you context for today's actions, but then you have to put the vision to one side. The mistake we make is that we attach our emotional well-being to something that may or may not happen. So once we have a vision that gives ourselves context for today's actions, we put it to one side and we focus on executing on those actions today. Because without execution, we can't make progress. And that's where focusing on the now is so key.
Right, focusing on now. But then like speaking from my generation, we want to achieve a lot in shorter span of time. Like we want to do this and then we want to do this, we want to do that. Is that the wrong approach, or is it okay to test different things and figure out how it goes?
Well, if somebody came to me and said, I want to achieve this, this, and this, the first question I would ask them is, what is important about achieving the things you've just shared with me? Because I want to understand, first of all, are those things that you shared, are they important to you, or are they important to get validation from someone else?
Right.
That's the first thing to understand. Because the reality is, for many of us, there are only a few things that we really want. All the other stuff is because there are influences from our peer group or society or parents or family, and we feel like we need to have that in order to please someone else. And so we don't want to live a life for other people. We want to live a life true to ourselves. And so really understanding, what does success mean to you first? Now, it could be achievement. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with achievement. It could be achievement, but as long as you know it is important to you, that's the real thing you want to answer. and then you can build from there.
First, let's get into the mindset. Like, you experienced a lot of things before you got into the coaching business. At what point did you realize, like, because I've seen a lot of your videos and you have this amazing talent of unpackaging things, unpackaging thoughts of people and understanding what are they thinking, and then navigating from there to reach to a point that they feel like, aha, now this makes sense, right? So at what point did you realize, like, okay, I have this gift of seeing things in terms of the other person's point of view, that I can help a lot of people like figure out what they want to do? And what was that aha moment? Like, can you give me an instance, a story? Like, what was it like?
Yeah, so when I was experimenting on the side of my full-time job in finance, what I wanted to do if I was to start a business or become an entrepreneur, I got involved in a couple of businesses, and they didn't work out for various reasons. And so I got my journal out and I started writing down, what are the things that come naturally to me? What are the things that people come to me for and want to engage with me for, that they see as a strength I have and a weakness that they possess? And one of the things that came up when I was journaling and writing my thoughts onto paper was that I noticed that a lot of people would come to me when they had a challenge, when they had a dilemma, when they had a hard decision to make, or when they were simply lost in either their life or their career. Now, at the time, I thought helping them was just simply being a good friend, listening, sharing my questions that I had, helping to guide them, helping them to navigate the uncertainties that lay ahead. But then I quickly realized that actually you can build a business around that skill. And so I went to a seminar here in London. It was a 2-day seminar, and it didn't cost anything. All it cost me was my time, so there was no financial cost. So I thought, why not go and experience what this weekend is about and see if it's something I enjoy. So I went there. By the end of the weekend, so by Sunday afternoon, I came out and I said to myself, this is a very interesting area and I'd love to explore it further. And so a few weeks later, I signed myself up to study towards 2 of their qualifications. And then a couple of years later, I was now a qualified coach. So it was really by exploring my curiosities that led me to a lot of coaching. And so, one of the things I share with people is that we all have curiosities, things that we are interested in, things that we gravitate towards. But we have got to have the courage to explore those curiosities. We have to have the courage to pursue what we are curious about. Otherwise, we never know if it's something we want to do long term. And the thing about curiosity is that curiosity leads to questions, questions lead to insights, and insights lead to breakthroughs. And we don't get the breakthroughs unless we action our curiosities.
People obviously would be curious about figuring out, testing out new things, but they struggle in terms of acting on it. Why do you think that is? And if that is the situation, how can somebody come out of that mindset?
Quick one. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please do so. Your support is the only reason that I've been able to have all these incredible guests on my podcast for trying to bring more value to you. So please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, like the videos, leave me a comment, hit the bell icon, save the podcast, share it with your friends, whichever platform that you're consuming this on. And yeah, that's it. Back to the podcast.
I think the biggest obstacle people have when they get an idea, an insight, or a curiosity come up that stops them from taking action is fear, doubt, and validation. So the fear is, what if it doesn't work out? The doubt is, am I good enough? Am I someone that can actually make this work? And the validation is, how will I look in front of my friends and my family? So those 3 tend to be the biggest obstacles for us taking action. But if we can collapse that gap between idea and execution and focus on having a bias towards action, we're going to learn a hell of a lot more than overthinking. Because if you overthink and you give in to your fears and your doubts and your validation, it's going to take years, if not decades, before you even begin.
Can I tell you a story? Like I wanted to start a podcast. So I had this thought in my mind, like, what if someday, like I start my own podcast, how would that be like? So I visualized it, but then obviously, yeah, same thing. I wasn't thinking in the right direction. I had these thoughts like, okay, what if it fails? Like I'm doing a lot of things here and there, but I know in a way that I'm going to navigate it because I'm passionate about, first of all, having a podcast, and then I'm passionate about having a podcast that is business oriented, like talking about business, talking about mindset, talking about in general, helping people and helping myself in terms of learning from the guests. And yeah, I had the same thought. I DM'd a lot of people in the first month, like asking them if they want to come on. I probably texted about 100 odd people in the first month. Like every day I would DM on Instagram, hey, would you like to come on my podcast? Like I didn't receive any response from a lot of them, but then one guy said yes. And then here I am. I absolutely enjoyed. So yeah,
Indeed.
the curiosity.
That is one of the most common characteristics amongst the most successful. If you look at the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders and organizations, what you will notice is that the number one characteristic that is most common is this bias to action. They are action-oriented people. Many people will think about ideas for a long time. They say, well, how am I going to put this into action now? Even if it's a tiny step, they will put it into action. So I was catching up with a friend yesterday, and we hadn't seen each other for a number of years. And there's so many things that we're both doing. And just in that conversation, we were saying things such as, I need to introduce you to this person, or I should connect you with this conference, or I should connect you with this company. Within 24 hours, we had already started introducing each other to these opportunities. 24 hours. Some people would take weeks or months before they even put the things they told themselves they were going to do into action.
Yeah, like I could relate on that. Like I acted on it and then here I am. But talking about mindset, Simon, like, do you have the right ingredients in terms of being a successful in whatever activities? I'm not saying that you need to be an entrepreneur or something, like being a successful person, like what are the key ingredients that you need to have in terms of mindset so that you can achieve that goal and focus on the micro steps?
For me, when it comes to mindset, the most important thing about mindset is how you respond to obstacles, challenges, and setbacks. Because when things are going well, regardless of whether you're an entrepreneur or not, you might be working in a company, you might be running your own business, you might be a parent. Now, when things are going well as a parent, as an employee, or an entrepreneur, you don't have to worry about mindset because you're happy. Things are going well, you get a promotion, you get more money, your business is going well, you're selling a lot of products or services, and your family's doing well, so there's nothing to worry about. The real test of your mindset is when a setback occurs or when something unexpected happens in your path. This is where mindset really kicks in. And so one of the ingredients to developing a powerful and resilient mindset is to understand that our thoughts create our reality. There is no one reality. We live in customized realities. So what I mean by this is that we live in the feeling of our thinking moment to moment to moment. What you bring into your mind, you bring into your reality. So many of us, when things don't go our way, we are quick to react, we're quick to judge, and we let ourselves be a victim of whatever has happened. But if we have the right mindset, we would pause, we would reflect, and we would choose our response in a way that is much more productive and that would help us move forward quicker. Because it is in our response where our greatest power lies. Life is never about what happens to you. It is about how you choose to respond to it.
Yeah. And when you say like during hard times, during adversity, your real test of mindset comes into play. Let's say there's bad symptoms from adversity for a person that they have some sort of bad behavior that comes out from that situation, how can somebody come out of that, a shift in terms of mindset that this is what I need to focus on right now? Because you don't think rationally when you're upset or when you're in that situation. How can somebody create that awareness that this is happening and I need to focus, switch my focus to something that's more, that could lead in a positive outcome for that situation?
Sure, the easiest thing you can do if you are going through a particularly difficult time or situation is to write. Write your thoughts onto paper. Now, the thing is, often we keep those thoughts in our head. And what happens is when we keep our thoughts in our head and we don't write them down or we don't talk about it to someone, so some of us may talk about it to a coach or a mentor or a therapist, and some of us like to write, but I would always recommend writing because it's a powerful activity. If you don't do that and you simply keep it in your head, what happens is that you end up being paralyzed by overthinking. You think about your thinking, and you just go into yourself. You go into your shell, and you take no action to resolve the situation. But when you download your thoughts onto paper, number one, you raise your level of awareness. Yeah. Number two, you can begin to understand your thoughts. And number three, you begin to have clarity on the best way forward. So the way to see it is to imagine therapy through writing as an activity that comes free to all of us. If you can't afford therapy, write. Because when you write onto paper, you get to know yourself at a deeper level.
Yeah, right. That makes sense. Like writing is one of the best ways. Simon, in your experience, like you've worked with entrepreneurs, executives, professionals, and most of them, like most people are looking for answers from you. Do you think people know the answers? They don't ask the right question? And if so, like how can they approach somebody or something, their life, that I need to think in this direction so that I can find the right questions to have the desired outcome?
I would say often when I look at people struggling, it is their environment that limits their progress. So I'm often asked, Aakash, what is the fastest way to make progress in any area of our life? And I often respond with the statement that the fastest way to make progress is to design an environment around you that makes it impossible not to succeed. Because when you change the people you spend the most time with, when you change the books that you read, what you listen to, what you watch, even the physical spaces that you spend time in, your mindset transforms and you discover the energy to get things done, to seek out the people that can help you make progress. And so usually it's the environment that must change, that can change somebody's thought process. And from that point, it is then asking the right questions, because we all have the answers inside of us. You know, for many of us who have experienced meditation, we know it is powerful because with meditation, it grounds you in the present. And it demonstrates to you that silence is far from empty. It is full of the answers and the wisdom that you seek. And the reason is because it brings up questions. What do I need to do in order to move forward? Who do I need to speak to? What is one step I can take today that will make me feel like I'm making progress towards that vision? We all have the answers. Sometimes we just need the question to unlock the answer and then have the courage to take action on the answer.
Right. Yeah, that's true. More about public speaking, Simon. Like I'm a good observer, right? Like part of my job in terms of like going back to financial services, I'm also from financial services. I'm from the stock market. So like I'm a good observer. I can observe patterns. I can observe people. I can observe market behavior in terms of I'm a good observer. And then I make decisions around that. So like I watched a lot of your videos and like I noticed that you speak so confidently, like you're so calm, you're so present. how did you achieve that level of communication style? And if somebody wants to become a public speaker or a good communicator, how can they do that in terms of, do they need to like enroll in some sort of coaching, or is it so that they can practice on their own and they can do that?
Sure. So when it comes to communication, what makes me a confident public speaker? I think there are two components, Aakash. I think the first, as with any skill, is practice. It's like learning how to drive a car. When you go to do a driving test, the instructor sits on one side of the car and they assess whether you are eligible to pass the driving test. Now, when you're doing the test, you're checking your mirrors, you're checking everything's okay, you're driving, you're following all the signals and you're following the signs. And so you're very conscious of what you're doing when you are being tested and watched. And even when you first start driving your car, after you've passed, you're still doing all the checks and you're still checking out for all of the signs.
Yeah.
But after a while, you just drive. You just drive in your own way. And when somebody comes up to you and they say, hey, can you teach me how to drive? You'll be like, well, you just drive. I don't know how to teach you this. Yeah, you just put your foot here and you drive. And so because it's come natural for you, it's a lot more difficult to explain it. So part of it is practice. The more you practice, the more you're comfortable with what you're saying, the easier it is to have that communication. The other part of it is self-belief. There's something I often share, that when it comes to skill development, there's always two sales that occur. The second is selling you to others, and the first is selling you to you. And unless you can sell you to you, the second will always remain the challenge. So if you don't yourself see that you have value to offer, how is anyone else going to see that? So you have sabotaged yourself before you said one word. But if you believe that you have something of value to offer, people will feel that. And the way you communicate will be vastly different.
Yeah, I can resonate to that. So I started making videos around my subject. Like the only reason that I was able to come off as confident was because I had actually done it. I wasn't trying to manipulate and like the conversation or anything. I was just saying the truths that I knew of. So that I could relate to that. That makes a lot of sense. Like you should be authentic what you're talking about. When you, okay, like I'm going to segue for a minute because this has a lot to do with intuition. Like when you speak about something, you need to be confident. And the only reason that you can speak confidently is because when you know something, and when you know something, you should be passionate about it. And I think that intuition has a lot to do with passion, figuring out, you need to have that intuitive feeling to figure out, hey, I'm passionate about something. Right. So can I tell you a personal story? So right. So like a couple of months ago, I was researching on a company that was a communication company. It was from the Indian stock markets. I was looking into it. Like I read a lot about the management, people running behind that business. And then I still didn't look into it. But then there was this one moment that I'm not even sure what that was. I kind of had that intuitive feeling like, hey, now, like look into it right now. So I did that. And then like I bought some shares and then the stock went up 25%. Like I don't even know what that was, but I believe that that was some sort of intuitive feeling that I had at that moment, that was the moment that I thought, okay, you should look into it. And I'm trying to go back and realize what that was. Most people don't even know that they're having that intuition. If so, like I need to learn from you that how do you define intuition in terms of what is it that you see from your angle, and then how can somebody learn from you that this is what I am passionate about and my intuition tells me that this is what I should pursue?
Sure. Well, first of all, you're right. We all have intuition, but a lot of us don't access the intuition as much as we would like. And that is why there is a popular statement that goes, the longest journey that we humans make are the inches from our heads to our hearts. And that is because deep down, we do have that intuition. We have those whispers that tell us what we're meant to do or what we should do, but for whatever reason, we ignore them. And so one of the ways to cultivate our intuition is to make sure that we are prioritizing me time in our calendar as much as time for meetings and social events and even holidays. because what we tend to do in reality is we cram our calendars full of meetings. And so we end up being back to back with doing something for other people without realizing that we need space for ourselves. Now you can go out, you can collect all of the dots that there is. You can collect dots from your environment, from people, from knowledge, from books, and so on. But there's no point collecting dots if you don't give yourself the space to connect them. Intuition is our ability to connect the dots that we're exposed to. It's why you could have a conversation with someone from one industry, conversation with someone from another industry, and your intuition brings together those two experiences to give birth to an original idea. Now, if you don't give yourself space for that to happen, then you are suppressing your intuition. You're not giving your intuition oxygen or breathing space to communicate to you.
Right. And is there a way that like we need to even be aware that this is my intuition? What is it? What is that? Like, how do you know like this is my intuitive feeling and I need to act on it?
It's typically defined by your inner voice. You know, what happens is when you feel particularly drawn to something, or if you make a choice and you have a bit of tension inside of you. So let's say you do a job and then every day you wake up, there's a bit of tension inside of you and you don't feel good about going to work. That is your intuition telling you maybe you're not meant to do that job. Maybe you should look for another job. Maybe you should try a different career. That's your intuition. Sometimes intuition just comes out through feeling. That feeling of tension, that feeling of dread. Now, if you wake up one morning and you're excited about your job and you can't wait to go into the office and you can't wait to meet your colleagues, that is also intuition, and it's telling you, I really enjoy what I do. I'm really excited about going into this company and creating some great things for its future. That is intuition. Yeah. Intuition typically shows up in the form of a feeling or an emotion. So we need to be tuned into ourselves to be aware of what that intuition is telling us.
Right.
Intuition doesn't speak to you in words. Intuition speaks to you through emotion and feeling.
Yeah. And like when you have an intuitive feeling, like how do you be more aware? How do you have that focus? How do you define that moment that I'm having this feeling?
To be more aware, one is, as I mentioned earlier, is to create some space just to be. Number two is to pause when you feel like you want to react to something. Because a lot of us, we react very quickly without thinking. But imagine if we were to pause and then in between the pause and the reaction, we ask ourselves a question. So if something doesn't work out the way you want, instead of emotionally reacting immediately, ask yourself, what else could this mean? What else could this mean? And then choose your response. Because what you're doing here is you're putting your mind in a position where it can reflect on what has happened. Rather than get emotionally caught up in the moment and maybe respond in a way that you will regret later on.
Okay, a lot of that has to do with focus as well, I believe. How can you be more focused in terms of your emotions, your work, whatever that is? Speaking in terms of today's generation, like our attention span is a lot lower than what it used to be. So how can somebody develop a higher focus, and what do they need to do in order to do that?
Sure, two things come to mind, Aakash, on the back of that question. The first is being aware of what distracts you the most. Now, for many of us, it will be the pings on our phone, tabs on our internet browser, telephone going off, somebody knocking at your door. There could be a lot of things that are distracting you from focusing on what matters most. So once you're aware of that, it's, well, how do I eliminate or reduce some of those distractions so I can have greater periods of focus on what I must do? On the other side, it's about creating a vision that is so exciting and compelling and magnetic in nature that those distractions just fall away. because focus becomes easy. You're so excited about what's coming up that you can't help but want to work on that thing. You know, for me, for example, if I have a lot of exciting speaking engagements coming up where I get the opportunity to speak on stage to hundreds or thousands of people, because it excites me so much, it is very easy for me to focus on putting together a great speech, putting together preparation to make sure that when I go on that stage, I deliver the best to my ability. So on the one hand, it's being aware of your distractions and managing your distractions. On the other side, it's important to understand the vision. Get clear on where you want to be, make it exciting, make it bold, make it bright. So it's so magnetic in nature that it can't help but pull you forward.
Right. And when you talk about like when you have a speaking gig, I'm going to segue here. Like, how do you prepare for that? Like, I'm sure like you must be having some routine, but like I've watched a lot of your speaking events and everything. So, and you seem so like I'm sure even in real life people are drawn to you. Like we have this virtual setting, and I'm still drawn to you. I'm sure it must be the same in real life. What is it that you like? What's your research process like before you go into some speaking gig, and how do you go about preparing for that?
Sure. So for me, once I know the topic or the theme that I'm going to speak about, I then want to draft the journey of the talk. So for me, I see the talk as a journey. Where do I begin my talk at, and how am I going to end my talk? And then what I do is I think to myself, well, what are the stories that I want to include in my talk? And what are the messages that I want to share with the audience? And what is a great way to finish? And then I'll start sketching out the journey like a story. And then I start filling it in with all the detail. And then I start rehearsing and practicing. And for me, the best speakers are the ones that have the ability not just to engage your mind, but to also touch your heart. If you can engage somebody's mind and touch their heart as well, you've delivered a great talk.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. I'm trying to recall. Okay, did Simon touch my heart when I was watching his videos? That was the reason I was drawn to you. I need to go back and see what was that moment like for me.
I mean, the key, you think about touching somebody's heart, it's all to do with emotion.
Yeah.
Does your presentation, does your talk have an emotional connection with someone? And keep this in mind. I talk a lot about energy. Emotion is nothing more than energy in motion. It is like what the author Maya Angelou said. She said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget the way you made them feel. And that's why emotion and storytelling is so powerful when it comes to speaking.
I wasn't aware of that. I didn't even think of in terms of storytelling. I'm still learning after making content, but I understand like it's very important when you want to sell something, if you want to influence on any subject that you talk about. Simon, you mentioned bending realities. You don't have just one reality. You could have multiple like realities. And it seems like a lot of this was foreign to me. It seems like Star Wars woo stuff. I didn't know all of that. So can you tell us, and I'm sure like I'm not even saying that that's wrong, because I know that if somebody has a lot of control on their mind, they can understand a human mind, they can do that. How can somebody learn that process? How can somebody understand that, hey, this is not the only reality that I can have? I can change things if I switch my mindset, if I can switch my thoughts. Can you teach us like what is it that you do when you help your clients? They want to bend their reality, they want to change their situation, life situation, business situation.
So the way that we bend our reality is first to understand that at any given moment, you have the ability to choose one thought over another. At any given moment. So let's say an event happens. Now, when an event happens, the event itself has no emotion. So if a car crashes into a wall, the wall does not get angry and the car doesn't get sad. There is no emotion in the event. But we as humans, we need to attach a meaning to the event. And that is why for some of us, when an event happens, we're sad. And for others, when an event happens, the same event, they're happy. And so if we have the ability to choose one thought over another, that gives us the power to bend our reality. So when I work with a client and they are talking about a challenge, what I would do is to get them to see that challenge through a different perspective, through the power of questions. For example, what else could that mean? What is that trying to teach you? What is the lesson here? What opportunity has now arisen as a result of what happened?
Right.
So even if I look at my past and my journey, on the one hand, I could see the fact that I was made redundant within the first 14 months of my job as bad, but actually I could see it as a blessing because it allowed me to become an entrepreneur. I could see the failing of my second year at university as bad, or I could see it as a blessing because it meant that I got to meet my now wife. So the event itself is neutral. We get to bend reality through the meaning and the way we interpret an event through thinking.
Yeah.
What's your experience of that event and how can you change it? In fact, if you consider time travel, we cannot time travel at the moment. But the closest that we can get to time travel is to go back to an event in our past and change the meaning that we have with that event.
Yeah.
So let's say there was an event in your past that you feel particularly bad about, or that gave you some sort of trauma or grief. Now, if you go back and you change your relationship with that event, so instead of the event meaning you couldn't do something, imagine now, because of the event, you are now able to do something else that made you who you are today. Suddenly, you've just started to bend your reality.
I mean, it's a learning. There's a lot of lessons when you have such incidents, and you can switch your perspective there. Let's take an example. Somebody who's struggling in their life, maybe just trying to stay above water. They have financial distress. They have very little support from friends or family, and they're looking for answers. Like they want to change their reality. They know that they've messed up with some sort of decision. How can they change their reality through their thought process?
The first thing that they can do is to write down two lists. The first list is the things that I cannot control. The second list is the things that I can control. Because when we are going through a period of loss, or we're going through a difficult period in our personal or professional lives, we can easily fall into the trap of focusing on things that we cannot control. And that just creates negativity and toxicity, because then we end up as someone who is blaming everyone else. It's because of him or her. It's because of the economy. It's because of the government. It's because of the politicians and so on. But if we start to focus our energy on the things we can control, and I guarantee you, there is always something you can control, however small.
Yeah.
If you start focusing on that list of the things that you can control, you're going to start creating momentum. And once you create momentum, then you build your confidence. And then you take another small step and another small step and another small step. In fact, if you only take one small step each day, a year from now, that is 365 steps forward. Just imagine where you could be.
Simon, I also wanted to talk about something that I'm struggling with myself. Sleep, right? It's so underrated. Like, it's important. I understand. There's a time when I used to go out as a light, like just like that. But now, like, I'm a grown up, a lot of work pressure, a lot of things going on. And I'm sure a lot of people struggle with that as well. How can somebody get better at figuring out what their stress causes and like sleep like a baby again?
Well, first question I would ask you, Aakash, because you said it's a challenge that you are facing.
Yeah.
Is what is stopping you from getting the sleep that you want?
I think It's a lot of work that I'm doing. I'm burnt out, maybe. I'm trying to do a lot of things and I'm trying to control things. I want to do this as well. And I want to finish this as well. Like I'm handling multiple projects at one time. And I know that I'm not able to focus on my health because of that.
So if I've heard you correctly, Aakash, what you are saying is that you're not getting enough sleep because you've got a lot of work to do and a lot of work to get done.
Yeah.
And you're not getting enough work done because you don't have enough sleep.
Yeah.
But you can't focus.
Yeah.
So this is a question you have to ask yourself then, Aakash. Do you want to be running a business or your projects where you feel like you are always just surviving? Or do you want to be thriving in the long term? Because the more you take on, if you haven't put your health as a priority, it means that you are on a road to burnout. And this is what so many of us need to be doing, is we need to stop making our health a side hustle. Our health cannot be a side hustle. It needs to be something that we prioritize. And so a couple of thoughts that come to my mind is, number one, do not put too much on your to-do list. Because what happens is that we keep putting more and more and more on our to-do list that we never get around to finishing it. So for me, it is to limit your to-do list to around 3 important things. And here's why. Because otherwise, everything becomes important. You look at your list and you've got 25 things that to you are important. The reality is they're not all equally important. But if you got those 25 things, the next thing you ask yourself are, which of those 25 things are the most important that I get done today? So that even if I only got 3 things done on that list, I feel like I have had a productive day. Now, the reality is when everything is equally important, we do the easy things on the list that don't actually move us forward. And then we put off the things that are actually going to move us forward. So we put off those big another day and another day and another day. But if we were able to prioritize, we could get those big things done and we would feel vastly more productive and can go to sleep happy with what we have accomplished.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that I could understand. Like a lot of what you said, I'm trying to do that. Because of that, I'm not patient, and that's causing me burnout. Simon, I'm going to there's a whole different segment that I want to cover as well, and we don't have too much time, but I'll make it brief. Let's talk about business, because I'm sure a lot of people want to learn from you how they can thrive in their business. We talk about passion, we talk about self-awareness, that you should have a business around your passion, and then you won't feel like you're working, right? But most people don't have self-awareness. How can they find that this is something that they're passionate about? We talked about intuition, but we didn't talk about passion. So can you help the viewers?
Yeah, with passion, the thing is, you do not wake up one morning and you go, Eureka, this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. That does not happen unless you see it in the movies. And the movies is not real, it's made up, it's fiction. The reality is you find what you are passionate about by experimenting. Experiment, try things, get things wrong, learn from it, try again. And so finding your passion is a process. And so the way to think about it is, imagine yourself as an 80-year-old version of who you are, and write down all the things that you would have wanted to have done in life. And then ask yourself, which of those things you would regret if you never did. If you never started or you never explored that thing that you wrote down, which of those things would you regret the most? And that usually starts to tell you what you're passionate about. So that's what I would do as a way of building awareness, is to do that exercise and then just get out there and experiment. Because once you experiment, you begin to understand, is this for me, or should I be doing something else? But you don't know that unless you try.
I could, I understand. The only reason I was able to DM 100 people in the first month was because I did not want to regret. Right. I wanted to take that chance. I wanted to see if if this having a podcast is for me was because I was pushing regret that bad. So yeah, that makes sense. Let's say I was not aware of my strengths. I didn't know that I want to talk about business. I want to talk about this. I don't even know my strengths and weaknesses. I do know that like I'm good at something at my job, but I don't know if that's something for me. And I'm in the process of figuring out, having that unlock moment that this is what I want to pursue full time. And I want to go all in. I want to take a chance on myself that I'm going all in on this thing. How can people find that unlock?
What I would say, in the same way that I did, is to start asking your closest friends, what do they feel comes naturally to you that doesn't for other people? What would they say are your strengths? What would they say that you just seem to do that they wish they could do? Because often we don't know ourselves what our strengths are until we ask somebody else who sees us from the outside. And they might respond and say, hey, I've always seen that you have this ability to do X so well that I would love if I could learn how you do it. So sometimes we need to ask other people about what they see in us so we can get better awareness and understanding of the strengths that we possess.
Yeah, right. And is it okay to double down on your strengths, or should you still be exploring different areas to figure out if there is anything else that you're even better at than what you figure out something?
I would say double down on your strengths, because if you wait until you know what your other strengths are, you'll never get started. You're going to be spending a lot of time in research mode. So I would say double down on your strengths, and as you make progress, you will quickly discover other strengths that you have that you didn't know.
Yeah, right.
So you want to start where you are strongest at to get that momentum, and then you will get a lot more feedback and data as you make progress.
I knew it. Like Simon has these moments where you feel like, okay, now it makes sense. Simon, like this is coming off. I'm being super honest here. Like you are so sincere when you communicate. You come off so honest that the other person doesn't feel like that you're trying to sell them something. Whether it's your coaching, whether it's something that you're trying to help them through. I also watched one of your podcasts that you did with Ali Abdal. I mean, it was so sincere throughout the video, throughout the podcast. You expressed your thoughts so honestly that I didn't feel like you're trying to manipulate something. You felt like it was honest. Most of it has to do with you have a lot of experience, but I think that's also a great sales tactic. And I wanted to use that an instance in terms of how can they use that skill in terms of their business when they're trying to sell something. Is it a way that they can find out, okay, this is how I should come off when I'm trying to sell something?
Quick one. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please do so. Your support is the only reason that I've been able to have all these incredible guests on my podcast. We're trying to bring more value to you. So please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, like the videos, leave me a comment, hit the bell icon, save the podcast, share it with your friends, whichever platform that you're consuming this on. And yeah, that's it. Back to the podcast.
Sure. So when it comes to business, there are a few things to understand. Number one is money is an echo of value. So when you are growing your business, you want to focus on being a person of value. The more value that you bring to the marketplace, the more people want to pay you for that value. So if you look at, I'm going to take some examples, but if you look at Apple, the value they bring to the marketplace, because their devices are really cool. People like how simple and beautiful their products are. And so they buy lots of Apple products. You can meet a coach or a mentor who just gives you so much value that you want to do more work with them. You want to work with them because you just feel, if I'm getting this much value for free, imagine what I'm going to get when I pay this person. So money is an echo of value. How can you add value into somebody's life every single day? Because if you can do that on a consistent basis, you'll have all the clients that you need. The second thing to remember when it comes to business is that in the business schools, they talk about this acronym USP that stands for unique selling point. For me, I like to think about it in a different way. For me, USP stands for unique serving point. How can you serve your customers and clients in a way that they can't help but want to talk to other people about how amazing you are? I just started working with Simon, and the way that he onboarded me onto his program and the way that he's been working with me is so incredible that you've got to talk to him as well.
Yeah.
And so think about it from a point of service.
Right.
How can you be of service to others and create an experience like no other so they can't help but want to talk about it with other people?
Let's say I'm an aspiring entrepreneur. I have like $2,000 to my name. I hate my job, right? I don't know what my strengths and weaknesses are, but I'm open to exploring things. I'm okay with failing right now so that at least I'll have some sort of experience. And I want to build a business, but like what's the process there? How can somebody go about from that situation?
Number one, change your relationship with the job. If you hate your job, change it so it's a healthier relationship. Be grateful for the fact that you have a job and you have time to build your business. So see your job as an investor. Imagine your job is your investor in your business and is giving you capital through the salary that it's paying you to go and invest it in your business.
Yeah.
So if you've got 2,000 capital plus the monthly salary from your job, what would be productive for you to put that money towards? And then create a plan. What are you going to do with the time you have outside of work to make progress towards that business succeeding? So again, you've got to first change your relationship with the job, not something you hate, but something you are grateful for, because it's giving you the time to build the business on the side. It's giving you the capital to invest into your business. And then second, is to plan your time. If you don't plan your time, the week's going to go, the time's going to disappear. So before you start your week, ask yourself, how will I know that this week will have been a productive one from the point of view of my business? What must I have achieved by the time I get to the weekend so that I feel like I'm taking that little more steps forward?
Is it okay if we can do it like somebody, let's say we talked about somebody who's struggling. Let's talk about somebody who wants to, who doesn't want to quit their job, who doesn't want to quit their current business, whatever that is, small scale business. Let's say somebody like me. Can we do a demo? Like, how do you help people with your coaching service? That'd be helpful to a lot of people who want to sign up for your services as well. And what's the initial steps like?
Well, first of all, what is it do you want?
Okay, so I am trying to build my podcast and my personal brand. And through that, I am also trying to run a small marketing business, helping a lot of fintech companies from my the experience that I have from financial services.
And how will you know if we were to work together, Aakash, how would you know that the coaching relationship will be beneficial to you? In a year from now, how will you know that this relationship we have will have been beneficial?
I'm sure you have a lot of value to offer, and I'm willing to put in the hours. I'm okay with, I'm not somebody who like quits halfway. When I'm serious about something, I dedicate a lot of time and energy behind that.
So what's the most important things for you to focus on right now then?
My personal brand and my podcast, but I'm not able to figure out what is the number one thing because I have a few things going on.
Sure. So I get that all of those are important, and it's great that you are balancing those and focusing on them. But if you could choose just one to focus on today, so right now, which of those would be the most important to focus on right now?
Personal branding.
Okay, so what does that content creation look like?
I have to, whatever research that I'm doing for myself, I just put it out there. So there's not much additional research work. I just need to figure out a way, write a script, make a video, and then put it out.
Okay, so write a script, make a video, put it out. So write a script. Is that something you can commit to doing today?
Yes, I am.
I noticed some hesitancy, some unsureness.
Yeah. because I kind of made plans with my brother that we're going to play PS4 today. So
So what can you do today then that's even smaller than writing a script that will help move you forward, given you have that constraint that you've already committed to having some time with your brother there?
I can jot down a lot of ideas that I can write scripts on tomorrow or even on Sunday.
Great. Are there any ideas that come to your mind right now?
2 or 3, yes.
Okay, let's jot them down now. Do you have a pen and paper?
I do, yes.
Great. So you've got those ideas down, which means you've already made a start, Aakash. You've already made a start on that. So all you have to do later today is to add other ideas onto that notepad that you already have. And then you can use that for tomorrow to put the script together.
Like I said, it's already there. I just don't ask the right questions. When I was watching your videos, the same thing, like I watched how you are helping people, but somehow we don't ask the right questions, including myself. I don't know what that is, and I don't know how you do it, but you do it. So I'm sure people are going to love this segment as well. Simon, you've been an amazing host. Any last few thoughts that you'd like to share with your audience? Also, please share your handles and the website where they can hire you as a coach.
Thank you so much. Well, if you want to find out a little more about what I do, my website is simonalexanderong.com. You will find all my social media links there, but the two I use the most are LinkedIn and Instagram. My Instagram handle is @SimonAlexanderO. And my book is Energize, which you can find out more at getenergizebook.com. That is Energize with a Z. And in terms of final thoughts, one of the things that I've said and that Aakash and I have spoken about throughout this session has been about the importance of taking action and also the power of good questions. So a question that I will leave you with is the following. How much longer will you avoid doing what you are capable of in order to continue with what you are comfortable with?
Wow, that really hit. Wow. Okay. Thank you so much, Simon. This was an amazing podcast. Please reach out to Simon, guys. He's an amazing coach. I'm sure you're going to find a lot of value. I mean, that's all. I don't even need to sell anything from here. I mean, he's helped me as well. Thank you so much, Simon.
My pleasure, Aakash.